This episode was intended to be published about a month ago when we recorded it. Life has a way of changing your plans sometimes. Just after we recorded, my father went into the hospital and his condition worsened until, unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter. Since then, I have been taking time off with family. My father was a source of inspiration in our family, always urging us to reach further, go farther, and do more in our lives. That's something we hope is true with this podcast too, especially this episode, where Casey and I are grateful to be joined by Shoptalk VP of Content, Ben Miller, to share our top predictions for retail in 2024. If you're at Shoptalk this week and attend sessions or have hallway conversations that touch on any of these topics, as we expect that you will, let us know. We'd love your feedback. And so this episode and this season, with full heart, where we will dive deeper into AI, retail media, and the human side of retail, and hopefully help you, our audience, reach further and go farther in your retail business. This episode and season are dedicated to my dad. I hope you're listening and enjoy. This one's for you.
You're listening to the Retail Razor Show, where your expert hosts and their guests cut through the clutter in retail and retail tech to shape the future of retail.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Season 4 of the Retail Razor Show. I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm your co-host, Casey Golden. Welcome to Retail's favorite podcast, where we cut through the clutter to give you sharp insights on the retail industry and commerce technology. It's the show for product junkies, supply chain technologists, and everyone else in retail and retail tech alike.
Casey, are you excited? I'm excited. It's the start of a new season.
Very excited to see what's in store for us. Pun intended.
I don't know if I can top that one. So how about I just kick us off here and get started with this episode?
Go for it, Ricardo.
It has been our tradition now for 2 years to kick off the calendar year with our thoughts on predictions for the retail industry. This would be our third time doing that. And while some listeners may think we're a bit late in the year now to be doing this, I mean, yeah, I know it's February, but we have a good reason for this.
Yes, January is for strategy, not executing. Not only are we going to share our predictions, but we're joined by a special guest to kick off the season, great friend of the show, VP of Original Content and Strategy at Shoptalk and Grocery Shop, none other than Ben Miller.
I think this is Ben's third time on the show, and wow, I don't think I'm overselling it when I say this may be our best predictions episode yet.
I'm getting ahead of yourself, Ricardo, but he is a hard act to follow. So it's only fair for him to kick off the season and set the bar.
Let's go right to our discussion with Ben Miller and share our retail predictions for 2024. I can't think of a better way to kick off Season 4 than with our friend Ben Miller, VP of Original Content and Strategy at Shoptalk and Grocery Shop. Ben's here to help us deliver some truly amazing 2024 predictions today.
Welcome to the first episode of Season 4, Ben. Thanks for helping us kick off the new season.
Hey, thanks very much, Casey, Ricardo. Absolute pleasure to be here and really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, you're no stranger to the show, for sure. Our listeners have certainly enjoyed our Shop Talk and Grocery Shop recap episodes with you and Christina we've been on before. So we're turning things around a bit, though, this time, right? And rather than recapping things, we're going to start predicting things for the year together and see how this plays out later on.
Okay, so in preparation for today's show, we've come up with 10 compelling predictions. And I think it's safe to say that each one comes with strong opinions, and we're keeping score.
That's for sure.
Will retailers make brave moves this year and help me redeem myself? I'm invested, competitive, and maybe the most anxious. So let's jump in.
Let's do it.
On to our first prediction. Ben, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, I think we are poised at a really fascinating time in the retail market. So there's lots to talk about. And my first prediction is that we're going to see an acceleration in something that's been called the Temu-fication of retail. What do I mean by that? Well, firstly, I've got to give credit to our good friend Jordan Burke at Tomorrow Retail, who I think has coined that phrase that I've stolen. Yeah. But I'm going to kind of expand and hopefully put my own spin on it. So I think there's two elements. One is the business model of Temu and Shein, this manufacturer to consumers is being coined. Small batches produced in a kind of an agile way, so bringing the sort of agile methodology into production and then imported by air much quicker than historic models direct from the factory to be able to reflect fashions, change brands, test sizes, test cuts, change and move again at a lower price point than has previously been able. So look, I think there's significant impact across the apparel business of that model, and I expect to see more of it this year. But I think the side I'd really like to lean onto is how Temu is engaging with its customers and how it's driving demand on its platform, because that's got read-throughs for all of retail. So we're talking about at Shoptalk something we're calling next generation demand creation. So it's really understanding the tools and tactics that Temu and others are using to excite shoppers. So let me give you some great examples. Yeah, if you've spent any time on the Temu platform, you'd have seen drops, you'll have seen limited time deals. That's expanding. We've seen manufacturers doing collaborations, learning from that, starting to bring that. And then into digital marketing, Temu is full of gamification. There is a consumer base who are getting used to this, who are expecting it as part of their shopping. And we're starting to see that appear in more and more places. So look, just as a really interesting example, just last month, we saw a demo from Instacart of how they're going to put some gamification onto the screens on cable carts when you're shopping in a physical grocery store. So this connection between things that people have tried on an app to actually appearing in physical retail, that's what we mean. That's our interpretation of Temu-fication. And we expect to see that really accelerating in 2024.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to agree with this one. And I think it goes even maybe even beyond that, right? Because I think to your point on how this is being applied in store, particularly like the Instacart example, right? And the influence it's having on other retail brands trying to compensate for what I think brands are perceiving as they're losing customers to this low cost, high value kind of scenario that Temu's creating. I would even say like even beyond apparel, right? In almost every product category that they sell. I mean, I don't know how many ads I run into that are encouraging me to engage with the app with here's 100% off. I mean, talk about buying customer share, right?
It's so inexpensive that the risk to try and buy something is so low.
Yeah.
It's like,
and then you're hooked.
I'll lose $5 and I'll see if I get something good. Right. And then there's just incredible deals. It's like,
yeah, it's like taking that everyday low price concept to an extreme, right?
Yeah, this will be interesting to watch this year.
And I think
maybe it's train wreck or it may cost
exactly.
a train
wreck. Yeah, I think might be the most interesting thing to watch with this is how other retailers react. And plus, I would not expect Temu to sit still on this. I would expect them to go further.
No, right now, if you go into Google,
lose those customers.
Right now, if you go and use Google Shopping, Temu has taken over the whole entire Google Shopping pages.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to see things that are not Temu. So I think it's going to be, I don't think there's any retailer that is not going to be watching this.
And I think which will lead us on to further conversations we'll be having, less about the Temu business model, but just the amount they're currently spending on digital marketing is phenomenal across the US.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It, in my mind, too, sort of accelerates this divide between luxury brands on one end that can rely on the brand promise and versus low-cost value brands on the other end that they're kind of pulling to an extreme. And where does that leave everyone in the middle?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to come and talk about brands at the moment, but at the heart of our thinking about brands is product quality. And I think that's going to be the challenge. Yeah. But we'll let's come back to that one.
Yeah.
All right. Moving into number 2. The evolution of retail media will drive the digitization of physical stores. Winners will come from those who drive these customer service use cases to gain customer adoption. I mean, the physical stores have been the black box. This really has a measurement and cross-network management that will benefit. As what Andrew Lipson says, measurement makes markets. Mm-hmm. The digitization of physical stores will enable new measurement capabilities for RMNs and allow retailers to monetize that foot traffic volume in stores So it has a strong potential to disrupt the online marketplace ROI for retail media ad placement. I think we'll see more in physical locations and it leveraged.
Yeah, Casey, I completely agree with you on this one. And if we step back and think about, retail media has predominantly been an online thing because retail media was created by Amazon, which is an online player. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Now, every other retailer has woken up to the beautiful margins. So if you're a grocer making 2% margins and you've seen his media business over here on 20, 30% margins, of course you're going to want some of that. But if you're that grocer, 80% of your footfall is still in physical stores. So it's how do you take those principles, or closed loop attribution and using digital assets and bring them into your physical store? Well, you can only do that if you've got some physical hardware in the store to drive it. And finally, you've got some margins that are going to fund it. So for me, I completely agree. It can only go one way, and that is that we'll see more digitization of physical stores, and it's going to be driven by retail media money.
Yeah, I agree on this one too. I mean, I know, big surprise that we're all really, really big on the retail media piece, given who we are, all of our previous conversations. But yeah, I go back and say, before we ever had the phrase retail media networks, right, in stores, and I worked with organizations trying to deliver digital signage products into physical stestores. And I have to tell everyone, I think the mistake a lot of the signage providers made early on is not having come up with this phrasing and concept of a retail media network pitched to the marketing people. I always remind everyone, when I was in that market and trying to market those solutions, we were pitching them to IT people, which was, looking back, that was a mistake because IT can't drive content, right? So this was about content and working with brands, and that's not owned by IT. But so what that does tell me, though, is that a lot of this required the technology to catch up. And I think we're there. We've got signage capabilities in any conceivable format you want to apply in the store. We used to be limited by the size of TV screens to do this. And that's no longer a limitation. You can there's panels available in any shape, size, format you want at this point. And now electronic shelf labels are also connecting into this retail media capability, which means you've got almost any piece of real estate in the store can be transformed into retail media. And when you layer in technologies like computer vision to help measure these things, and IoT sensors and devices to know where people are in the store, we used to rely, of course, on just Wi-Fi for that, but we have all these other capabilities now that can be connected together. And we're starting to see retailers do that. So no surprise, I'm 100% behind this one as well, that all the building blocks are there to make that work. And so that's also a natural lead into our next prediction, number 3, which, again, big surprise, we have 2 retail media predictions. And that's that it's not just physical stores that are going to make this evolve and grow bigger, but I think we also now are going to see connections to streaming TV, connected TV, all of these other mediums that are in combination really going to disrupt advertising as a whole, where now we can say that spending on RMNs is likely to overtake TV spend this year, because you're going to have the combination of what Casey, what you mentioned before, the measurement, right? The capability to measure these things, the tracking. You add in the idea we're losing third-party cookies. You're not going to be able to rely on that anymore. It's all about that first-party data, and who can you partner with that has another set of first-party data that you can combine to offer advertisers the best possible targeting. So I would predict that we've started seeing this, but expect more combinations with connected TV providers. The TV set manufacturers themselves are all layering in advertising capability in their smart TVs. Plus, all of the streaming TV providers now have kind of come full circle. And where the original promise, I think, of streaming TV was you don't have to watch ads on linear TV anymore. But now where they're all introducing advertising again because it's an ideal platform to measure this.
Even on paid programs, right? We used to be able to pay to get rid of the commercials. And I'm saying like, hey,
well, Amazon Video just introduced ads, right? So now if you don't want ads on your Amazon Prime subscription, it's an add-on cost to get rid of them. Yeah. Every streaming TV provider is adjusting their tiering structure to accommodate ads. And you think about combining that with retail media networks, you've got a pretty interesting data set.
And as we record this, just yesterday, there's news starting to circulate that Walmart are having a look at Vizio to bring that hardware into the portfolio. So I think it's incredibly hot.
Yeah.
And just from Shoptalk's perspective, I think we're really cognizant 75% of retail media spend still goes to Amazon, give or take. So where they move, that determines a lot. So we've given a main stage keynote this year to Colleen Albury to the show coming up next month. Colleen is the SVP for ad products and tech at Amazon. So we're going to kind of hear exactly from her what's coming next. And yeah, I think one of the challenges we want to put is Amazon now an advertising business that's got a retail arm? Or is it a retail business that sells some ad space? Yeah. Because I think it's a really interesting conversation.
And I think that's a pretty telling statement, right? Because we used to say, is Amazon really a technology company with a retail side business? And now with the pendulums shifting a little bit, to your point, is it more of an advertising business? I think we can say we've made the same argument before about Instacart. Is it really more of an advertising business? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, if we move it into prediction number 4, we're kind of continuing down this same road, if you will. There's another layer to this, and let's talk about TikTok specifically, and maybe social commerce in general. We just talked about retail media disrupting advertising, but can anyone disrupt retail media in some way? And I would put forth our prediction number 4 that social commerce, specifically TikTok, and what we've seen through TikTok Shop last year into the holiday season, that could be something that disrupts retail media. And what do I mean by that? Meaning where advertiser spend goes. So could we also see not just RMNs partnering with streaming TV and connected TV, but is there a play for RMNs to connect into social commerce? We see deals with TikTok. There have been I think there have been some stories out there about maybe a possible Walmart deal. How many times are we going to mention Walmart in this series of predictions?
I don't know. You guys are talking about Walmart and RMNs. I'm going to have to ban the word RMN for our next 5 episodes, Ricardo.
Well, I think this prediction is all about return on ad spend, right? So where is that return ad spend going to come from? We've seen it increasing in the retail media network side. I would argue TikTok is proving that there's value on social commerce with TikTok Shop. So will we see similar things could happen potentially where I'll say maybe Pinterest is another potential platform where we could see that happen. And is that going to be a disruption? Is it additive? I think that's going to be the interesting thing. And I'm going to propose that if we don't see partnerships, then it'll be a disruption.
With these third-party cookies starting to disappear, I'd say, right? They're not going to just disappear overnight, but it's going to be gradual over this year. The way TikTok Shop has the products integrated and the way that they're leveraged is probably the best and easiest way for affiliates to even engage or do the work. And I think that since it's easier to connect to that inventory and it's easier to connect to get paid from the connected inventory in a TikTok shop versus an Instagram shop, the intended audience is essentially going to be able to drive that content. And so the more content, the more opportunity and the easier it is for them to generate faster and know that they're getting paid, it's not going to really matter what retail wants. The audience and then consumer at the end of the day, they have more control over saying what they like and what they don't like and making money off of it. Being an affiliate is a lot of hard work. Couple hours here, couple hours there. You may not get paid for certain things. They have to use your link. You can't go back later. There's a whole bunch of stuff that makes affiliate, they're earning their money, but the ease to do this on TikTok with integrated products, it's night and day.
Well, Katie, I'm going to please you with my next prediction because it involves neither Walmart nor Amazon nor retail media.
Thank you.
Shockingly.
Because I want to talk about brands, and what I really want to talk about is a prediction that we'll continue to see like heritage, legacy, traditional brands continue to really have a moment. So what do I mean by that? What have we seen? I think we've gone through a period of a lot of excitement around direct-to-consumer brands. And we've seen some incredible brands be established and be developed and become part of kind of part of our world. And what we saw is you had kind of legacy brands that had distribution, and you had these new D2C brands that had digital capabilities and were digitally native. And they were able to drive that growth through knowledge of the customer, through agility, and through those direct conversations. what we've seen of late is actually, particularly post-pandemic, the importance of distribution. So when you still, depends what category you're in, anywhere from 30 through to 90% of category sales still being physical, that ability to get your product in front of customers in a physical format repeatedly is really valuable. That traditional moment, P&G's first moment of truth, when you take it off the shelf, that's still there. You can touch and feel. And it's been harder for the many D2C brands to build physical distribution than it has been for some legacy brands to build digital capability. Now, that is in no way underestimating some of the incredible transformations that some of these brands are going through to build up their digital capabilities. But there's been phenomenal investment by legacy brands across many sectors to be able to do that. So you've now got, of course, you've got, whether it's Warby Parker's building their own stores or, companies like Allbirds going through wholesale, Bubble going through wholesale. You've got this suite of brands that are getting both distribution and digital capabilities. And that is helping a series of, I think, kind of quite traditional brands who've become digitally savvy to be able to almost reinvent themselves to be relevant. And there's a couple of ways that we're sort of seeing brands do that, whether it is driving distribution, creating new personas for themselves online, using everything from short form video through to feature films to tell new stories about their brands and reposition themselves to be relevant. And underpinning that, you've got this kind of third leg, which is product quality. And I think, as we've said about Temu, some of these brands that are having incredible runs at the moment, whether it's Birkenstock in footwear or Crocs or, obviously we hint as strongly towards Barbie and Mattel. No, these are products that have got long histories of quality underneath them. And you're kind of combining that product quality with new ways to be relevant to customers and talking about them in new ways and having new direct conversations and having distribution. I think we're going to continue to see more legacy brands continue to have moments in the year ahead.
I think it's going to continue to be, I think pretty much this decade is the most exciting time for heritage or legacy brands because of they didn't have to panic and move to a channel. They're essentially fat and happy. They don't have to move to a channel out of FOMO or we're going to miss out. It's going to hit our bottom line. Like they have they've always had a pretty secure and recession-proof business. And so they've really been able to just sit back and learn and watch the DNVBs build these digital presences, build these user experiences. And I think we all sat back and laughed. You can't say that the way we do retail is ancient and doesn't work and is too expensive. And then as soon as you learn retail, you're going to be in wholesale. You're going to open up stores too.
Yeah.
And so there was this aha moment amongst many of my friends who were just like, see, you want to know how to actually do merch planning?
Yeah, I think if anything, this has sort of shown us the truth to the innovator's dilemma, right? Where there's a cycle to disruption. And I think, and I'm going to suggest that almost all of us, and I'll probably include us all in there, because who didn't say during the peak moments of D2C success, say that, oh, this is just going to change everything. This is a moment, right? Everything's going DTC. Brands that we're completely flipping the model. I think what we've ended up proving is we sort of compressed the cycle, right? So disruption works in a cycle. You always have established players. Someone new comes along, has a new method of some sort, whether it's a new business model, new distribution model, whatever it is, causes a disruption. But I think the ultimate lesson is always that the two things that you really need to succeed in even against disruption is scale and agility. And if you have the scale, like these heritage and legacy brands have, and they're agile enough to adapt, imitation is the best form of flattery, right? So if they can learn to adapt and imitate these disruptive models that come from the much smaller, lacking scale disruptors, then they've taken away the differentiation and they can absorb that differentiation. And once they've done so and they apply their scale, then they should be able to recover and continue. And I think we see evidence of this when so many DTC brands got acquired by these legacy heritage brands. Some successfully, maybe some not so. And that, again, just in my mind, is a demonstration of their skill at being agile. Some brands will do it better than others. And even the best ones can have a momentary stutter, right? A lot of noise was made about Nike when they decided to pull out of a lot of their wholesale and distribution to put more effort into DTC. And then as soon as their numbers started to decline a little bit, we saw the pendulum swing and the media noise went the other way and said, oh, then did they jump too soon on that? Did they go too far on that model? Where I would argue their business is still sound. Sometimes you have a hiccup and sometimes you have external factors that you didn't plan for, but that doesn't mean the strategy was a mistake.
Yeah, I think a lot of these direct-to-consumer brands really did innovate digital commerce, especially for more of a premium product, rather Glossier's of the world, the Allbirds, the Warby Parker. But I do think Heritage will lead in digital commerce because they already have these 40 to 80 to 100 years experience in physical retail and retailing in general, where the technology today can adapt and be so much more flexible to bend and twist the way they want it to, what they want it to mean for them.
Right.
Because they have the power to dictate, because they are really strong brands. They're very profitable brands. They have very strong DNA and points of view. And it's not as expensive today to shape the way digital is going to look for them as some of the brands that launched this initially and really invested and paved the way. It was a lot more expensive for them.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of hard learnings for them.
Yep.
And some of them didn't have great outcomes.
Yep.
And I'd love to just build on something that you said as well, Ricardo, is about agility, which I think is key. You know, just having distribution is not a guarantee of success. You need to combine it, Casey's usually saying, with that unique and differentiated brand ID and brand DNA, and then build stories and build engagement off that. This week we've seen lots of the CPGs putting out quarterly results, and the geek I am, I've been kind of enjoying going through those numbers. And look, we've seen manufacturer after manufacturer talking about volume challenges. Inflation's got out the market, and there are volume challenges for some of these big brands in the CPG world who, as the economy has got a little bit tighter and spending with whether it's student loan relief coming out or SNAP changes, it's become a bit tougher. And suddenly we're seeing switch to discount, we're seeing switch to private label. So it's agility super key to be able to combine that and digital capability and driving demand with your distribution. And those that can do both are 100% the ones set to win.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to take a moment to pat ourselves on the back that we're halfway through our predictions list and we've yet to mention AI in any of them. So
I have a feeling this is going to be short-lived.
Yeah. Yeah. So that being said, prediction number 6 is all about AI and how AI is not just everywhere in retail. I think so far, just what we've seen, just even in this year, we're only into February and it's already showing up everywhere. But I think the distinction for this year is where last year maybe was more about the hype and the promise and stories of capabilities. 2024 is more about demonstrating real tangible ROI in AI investment and seeing that not just in what I'll call internal operational use cases, things like around forecasting, supply chain, which I think we have been seeing before, but more consumer-facing use cases that either directly impact customer experience or really help drive top-line revenue in some way that contribute to that ROI. And I'm going to include in that too, even things related to augmenting store associates, so I may come back to that a little later, but it's all these kinds of very visible use cases I think will be the new ones that we see, and there's going to be tangible ROI. We're already starting to see some retailers demonstrating that openly and talking about measuring a metric like we put this new AI tool into our stores and our store employees now say they're saving at least an hour a day in productivity and time that they didn't have before thanks to these new tools. So those are, to me, are tangible ROI on this AI investment that we're going to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we went into last year, everyone got very, very excited about generative AI, especially. Then there was a whole stream of caution from people who are very close to the subject and close to organizations who are developing it, which just created, I think, a bit of risk and a bit of concern in organizations So I think what we saw was a big deep breath taken. Number one, to make sure let's not all rush it. Is this just a hype cycle? Do we think there's something real there? I think we think there is. And number two is, okay, well, if we believe that, what are the guardrails? What do we need to put in place for our company to protect our data, to protect our employees, and to protect our customers and our customers' data? And how do we do that in a way that also creates a culture of experimentation and being inquisitive about this technology and the benefits that it can bring? And I think we started to see now companies who've got that in place. I was going to mention Walmart, but I don't want to go on the wrong side of Casey. But some large companies have put out some very public statements about their ethical AI pledges and how you navigate that. With those in place, it's then great. Let's accelerate into use cases and let's make some of this happen.
I guess everybody knows what side of the line I stand on. Am I the only person that has saved my money and an 8-top ramen for 9 months to buy a pair of shoes?
I think the question there is, did you switch to a private label ramen noodle?
No. Oh, going back into beautiful shopping experiences. Number 7, the engineered influencer. Evolution of frontline store teams augmented by AI, potentially. We have some ongoing labor shortages in many areas of retail, especially on the frontline worker side. Retailers will likely lead very heavily into AI, not just as an automation tool for stores, but to augment the capabilities of each store member, turning them into engineered influencers, where customers rely on everything from product discovery, curation, to general support. We'll see more self-checkouts, less staff, but the staff will have more tools to really augment how much they can achieve and not have to work as hard. In-store knowledge swings back to the hands of in-store teams versus in the hands of shoppers, where we were seeing more tools that allowed the shopper to do more by themselves, kind of going back to allow sales associates to do more for the customer. I just saw a video that's slightly gone viral, and it's one woman working at Kohl's. And she's in tears, and she is the only cash rep in the entire store. And the line is enormous, and she's just asking for help. And it is difficult to find skilled labor, be able to put the training resources together to get the staff well trained and take some of the heavy weight of all of the admin and everything that needs to be done off their plates, to really make that more enjoyable for the people that work there and the customer. Because no customer wants to be in line making her cry either, you know? It's not a good experience for anyone, but getting that staff in there and people wanting to have those jobs because it's not necessarily so painful is difficult right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've talked about this off and on with a number of guests on the show about how those store teams can get better tools, what technologies are going to make it better for them. And in fact, we've even talked about this idea of them being more like an influencer in the same way that we see them in social media, where you have these people who are acting as influencers to get you to buy a product, right? But every retailer has staff in their stores that know the products that they have. And they're very likely, if we think of the demographics of who are they hiring, they're probably people who are pretty savvy in social media themselves, are inclined to leverage social commerce for their own shopping needs. So why not leverage this expertise and help kind of turn your own brand into these engineered influencers using people you already have on staff? And I think the tools exist now to help make that possible.
Yeah, I've heard a handful of brands recently at a conference, and they were talking about 2 personas of associates and salespeople that they're looking to hire. The one that thrives behind the camera, and then the more traditional sales relationship clienteling piece, to be able to have both of them in stores and essentially teach each other's jobs, to kind of balance that out so they get the best of both worlds and can still kind of control some of that content that goes out to make sure it's on brand, but to kind of put them together and look for them both.
I think when you look at the numbers, the the unemployment numbers across the US are still in a very healthy position from that perspective. But if you look at the quit rate, so the number of people expecting to change jobs, it's significantly higher in retail than it is across the broader economy. So retail still has an attraction and retention challenge.
Yeah.
So any way that we can use technology to either make those jobs easier, more fulfilling, or more varied has got to be advantageous to everybody in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. So prediction number 8, this one might cause a little bit more of a reaction from people listening because it's going to be a little bit controversial, possibly just given some of the recent posts by a certain Facebook CEO. So here, I call this retailers jumping into Apple's Vision Pro platform. And why am I saying this? Not from a perspective of necessarily driving sales, but there have been a lot of good, interesting PR moments. I think J. Crew was one. Very tailored and customized shopping apps designed for Vision Pro to really leverage that spatial computing platform for customers to engage with. Anything from a basic virtual try-on to just an experience of wherever I am and I have a Vision Pro, I can be in that store and see any product I want and up close and as living in large as I want within that space, and really leveraging the power of this spatial computing VR, AR concept. So you might ask, well, why are retailers doing this? Because the numbers say that at best case, Apple's probably shipping a few 100,000 of these this year by most estimates. So not exactly a large market of people for a specialty retailer. And I'll keep using J. Crew as an example. They're not reaching millions of customers this way, right? They're at best going to reach a couple 100,000, maybe. So why do it? Why deliver this technology showcase? And I think that's really what the answer is this is sort of an attempt of retailer as a brand to get a first mover advantage, to really make some noise, be perceived as being edgy and a technology leader, knowing that they're trying to grab that halo effect of people who may be watching what's happening with Vision Pro, but aren't likely to invest $3,500 in the technology in this current iteration of it. So I believe, brands that take this path, and I think we're going to see more of them this year do it. Notwithstanding folks like Netflix saying, yeah, we're going to wait and see. I think we're going to see more retailers jump in, both as a learning experience, which I know people are going to think, oh, this is starting to look like the whole 2022 in the metaverse again, with people jumping in to create their shopping worlds. But I think it's a little different than that, because I think there's an expectation that Apple's in this for a long game. So that it's not this release of the product that's really going to matter much. If we think back to the first iPhone wasn't the massive hit. It took a few iterations for it to really become popular with the iPhone 3G. There was the 3GS, the 4, before it really started to have an impact on competitors. Who remembers having the BlackBerry, right? So I think it's something very similar, that there's an expectation for that. And this is all about who are the retailers who are going to position themselves early so that when we reach that critical mass, they've already established themselves.
I think it's really interesting. It's the early adopter phase, and I think you've got to be absolutely mad as any developer to not think that a new hardware platform that Apple's created needs to be experimented with. It needs to be looked at. You've got to have a go with it, 100%. And good for J. Crew and some of the other organizations who are having a go with it and trying to understand, because you'd be mad as it's Apple not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple ads for it, and there's somebody standing in front of a whole bunch of spreadsheets and docs, and I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And nope. I have 150 browser tabs open. Thank you very much. I work way too fast to have to use it that way. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, we have this huge opportunity as we move further and further into essentially a new type of screen. The glasses, the projection. This, I think, is probably one of the most meaningful like steps towards probably the next thing, because Apple did it, and they are known for better user experiences and a lot better purpose or thoughtfulness on these launches. So we'll see, right? Not super pro. I'm still trying to figure out more than 3 things to use my Apple Watch for. My favorite button is like find my phone, and that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. But that's a key feature. For
the
sure.
key feature. I'm like, I don't know where my phone is, and I can push a button and it beeps. I'm like, this is brilliant. I need more purpose for my watch. So I'm taking suggestions, everyone, of what your favorite use case is for your Apple Watch. because I'm still trying to adopt it and get it into my lifestyle with meaning. So talking about meaning, the modern consumer, 2024, shifting a little bit from the tech, but driven by tech. The modern consumer will become even more demanding this year, is my prediction. From the brands they shop with and the expectations that they're going to hold these brands accountable for, whether or not it's convenience, ethics, sustainability, the do better, right? And I think consumers are in a position to hold brands accountable. I think we just saw that with the Super Bowl commercials. One specific brand was immediately held accountable by millions of consumers. And the risk is real. And I think that this is a direct conflict with these types of sustainability initiatives and transparency, saying that they want sustainable and ethical companies that pay living wages, and then at the same time, and that they'll pay for it. But then at the same time, we have Shein and the Temu-fication of the United States. And we have this market of, well, I can get all of these things and do this haul for 80% less than on Amazon or on Walmart by going on Temu right now because I got all of these epic coupons from spinning a wheel. And so I think we're going to have some consumers, and we're going to see a little bit of this dichotomy of you've got the good and the evil on your shoulder of, I believe in this, but I'm doing this. Or is it going to push everyone from how they have been shopping and saying that they believe and will pay for higher quality products and made in the US or something more sustainable or upcycled, but not. And then they get all of these products and they keep chasing those prices down to where things are 80, 90% off because of a marketing push, that they actually pivot and say, okay, I don't want any of that stuff anymore. I'm not really happy when I receive these packages. And they start doing what they believe. So I think it's going to be an interesting moment to watch these two kind of dichotomies kind of shift, because we see what the modern consumer's doing and saying, but it's not necessarily matching how they're spending.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that the build that I would also give it is, as a prediction, I think kind of circular and not so much recycling, but reusing, selling platforms for, especially around fashion, this whole idea of the circular economy, whether that's been driven by sustainability or driven by thrift, I think it's a hard one, depending about which of Casey's shoulders we're sitting on. But I think that might be a model that applies to both. And I think we should expect to see some more developments and more platforms and retailers investing in circular solutions this year.
Yeah.
I think an interesting lens to look at this through is by product category, because there are certain segments where consumers, I think, ultimately will want longer lasting products that requires less replacement. If we think about over history, typically this comes from price, right? The most expensive things that a consumer wants. That used to be something like a television, right? So people would keep a television for 10 years because you didn't want to spend the money on a new one. But now you can get $100 TVs.
You can't keep a TV for 10 years anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Because when it only costs $100, what for, right? So you might as well replace it when the next new feature comes out. So I think there's a lot of potential variation by segment. It's going to be interesting to watch here. And I think that's one of the many things that this Temu-fication is disrupting, is by selling things so incredibly cheap in almost any category, it kind of does away with that thought process for the consumer, right? Things that I used to expect as a consumer, I have a long life cycle with, maybe isn't true anymore if there's a retailer like a Temu that's willing to sell it for $5 and I'm now willing to throw it away. So I do think that you're right, that this consumer demand in these things is going to somehow have to reach a conclusion there.
There's going to have to be some type of conclusion. And maybe that conclusion even goes into that the gamification of retail ends up getting some policy changes, maybe much like Vegas, where you can't have the ching, 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 ching anymore. We love that. So maybe some of the gamification is saying, listen, it's taking advantage of consumers. It's going into the fact that maybe you can't have some of these gamifications anymore because we know what works.
Right.
And the Vegas ching, ching, ching was like one of the biggest moments where I was like, oh, you're taking that away from my experience. I was having so much fun.
Yeah. Yep.
So boring without it.
Well, that I think brings us to our final prediction for this show. And Ben, I think maybe we've saved the best for last, right?
Let me give this a go. I'm predicting in 2024, we finally kill off Omnichannel. Omnichannel dead. So look, what do we mean by that? Is it just a word? Is it just semantics? We had a go with Shoptalk last year of declaring Omnichannel dead. And I think we've spent the last few months trying to really build on this principle, because what we mean by that is the idea of thinking about your customers and your products and your route to market just in the construct of sort of traditional retail channels it's kind of very inside baseball, isn't it? It's not putting the customer at the heart of it,
right? Which is
why we're talking about unified commerce. And by unified commerce, we mean being there for your customer wherever your customer wants you, and doing it in a joined up and consistent way. So whether that's online and offline, whether that is, you're transacting online, you're buying it, you're actually picking it up in a store, or whether it's just you're used to having a brand communication, a brand story in a virtual environment. When you show up in a physical store, it looks and feels the same and talks to you in the same tone of voice. It's having a unified and connected way, and not just in that customer proposition, also in the tech stack. I think retailers are really telling us, look, we need to move fast, 2020, 2021. We bolted things onto existing legacy systems, and our tech stack is now, it doesn't talk to each other, and we need help because it doesn't give us inventory visibility, et cetera, et cetera. So unified tech stack, unified structure. So we're seeing more and more companies moving away from having dedicated innovation teams, bringing digital teams into core IT teams, making sure e-com teams are baked into the core organization. So your teams are structured. You can't have a separate digital marketing team anymore because digital is marketing. So you've got to bake it together. So you unify the structure, unify the tech stack, and then you can turn up for the customers in a unified way. And I'm hoping that if I keep saying unified commerce enough times, then nobody will ever say the word phygital again. And that destruction of the English language is over. So please, let's kill off Omnichannel. Let's never hear phygital, and let's get behind unified commerce.
100%.
100%. I'm right there with you. I thought I invented the damn term like 8 years ago, and apparently I didn't. So I will repost and repeat anything you post on unified commerce.
Exactly.
Let's get rid of Omnichannel.
Yes. I think that's why we saved that one for last. All right. So we managed to get through 10 unique predictions for 2024. I absolutely love these. A fantastic set of predictions. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today for this.
Oh, absolute pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. And I think that just running through those 10 shows just how much is changing at the moment in our industry. And I think, most people get into retail because they really enjoy that fast pace of change. And then they get into the digital bit of retail because that's the most fast changing part. And the year ahead, it looks set to be really exciting.
Well, last year we were a bit more advantageous and future thinking and optimistic than what brands delivered. So I'm hoping this time we're not too early for some of these.
Yeah.
I can definitely think that this is where everybody needs to have their head and where we should see the most growth. I'm very optimistic about 2024 on technology adoptions, consumers, and opportunities. So I'm thinking that this is going to be a great year for retail. Where you guys stand?
I'm going to agree with it. I think there's good reasons to be optimistic for the year. I think the investments for retailers are going to be there. I mean, that's not to say there won't be some hiccups, that there may not be some pretty divided differences, so to speak, between one set of brands. But those who are leaders starting the year are likely to continue through the year as leaders. I think it's really more about the ones who are not in that group of leaders today, and what are they going to do this year to try to approach them and to try to gain that status and not stay behind. I think that's going to be the big thing we see this year.
Yeah. And for me, I I'm expecting to see more polarization. I think the companies who are embracing change and getting behind some of the things we've spoken to today are in a good position. I think those who aren't, there will be economic headwinds. I think as a number of stimulus incentives unwind in the economy, that will cause problems. And I think we will see a bit of a diversification in performance. I think there is growth and opportunity to get after. There is some really interesting technologies that are going to help it. But I think we will continue to see retailers and brands being selective in where they put their investments. I think there is less capital available. There is less VC money available. So I think it's going to be about selective. It's going to be about returns. It's going to be about profitability over growth. And I think it will be diversified. But I think within that, there is so much that's exciting to watch and to be part of. That's for sure.
Well, this might just be our best prediction episode to date. Thank you for joining us, Ben.
Thank you. Look, really enjoyed that. And look, really looking forward to seeing you both and hopefully lots of the listeners at Shoptalk. So just as a quick reminder, it's coming up real fast this time next month, 17th to 20th in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada. So we'll look forward to that. And then just, one of the most enjoyed parts of the show is our meetings program, the proprietary 15-minute meetings you can have. But just a final reminder, if you're planning on coming, you've got to be registered by the end of February to be able to take part in that. Otherwise, that selection and all the algorithms and the double opt-in that we do, look, you can still buy a ticket the day before if you want to, but if you want to be part of the meetings program, make sure you've got registered so you can be part of that before the end of February. So look forward to seeing you both and lots of listeners then.
Wonderful. So register for your Shop Talk. And on that note, Ricardo, this episode is a wrap. If you enjoyed our show, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods. Remember to smash that subscribe button in your favorite podcast player and tune in on YouTube so you don't miss a minute. A big thank you to Good Pods listeners for helping us stay in the top 3 spots of the charts. I'm your co-host, Casey Golden.
Please connect with us and share your feedback on Twitter at KCCGolden, Ricardo_Belmar, and at Retail Razor, or find us on LinkedIn, Threads, and Instagram. And if you want all the highlights from each episode shipped straight to your inbox, subscribe to our Substack newsletter for full episode transcripts and bonus content. I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep cutting through the clutter and stay sharp. This is the Retail Razor Show.